Whether it changed the course of the season or didn't change the course of the season, you've got to admit, it was pretty damn cool. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of b-schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you here in the early morning hours now of Thursday, August 22nd, 2024. Well, how about that one, folks? The Cardinals have fallen on some hard times recently. We sure do know that, but on Wednesday night at Busch Stadium, they had some fun. Cardinals 10, Brewers 6, a walk-off grand slam by Nolan Arenado. Cardinals win this one with authority in extra innings. As it was a marathon game, it was a game that seemed at several different points the Cardinals were going to take command of it, and they kept not quite getting it over the hump. And then in the bottom of the 10th inning, you're sitting there thinking, surely this time, bases loaded, only one out. They're going to find one of the variety of ways you can get a run home in a Major League Baseball game to come to fruition in this moment. And Arenado said, I'll do the easiest way of all. I'm going to put the ball over the wall. He was absolutely amped up, rounding the bases. His teammates were fired up. That's a jolt that the clubhouse needed. That is a jolt that Busch Stadium needed. Lowest recorded attendance in a long, long time. Under 30,000 was announced. And remember, the announced attendance is always the paid attendance. It's not the number of butts in seats. They'll never announce that number out loud. But to know that this was the direction and the trend of the way things have been going recently, to the point that the Cardinals did something that they've never done in this ballpark, announced fewer than 30,000 paid for a game that was not impacted by a global pandemic in terms of the attendance. The fans have been speaking loudly with their wallets and with their choice to not show up to these games, to support a team that's been struggling, that has not been putting a product on the field that, you know, demands in the eyes of a lot of the fans their attention at this point. And I'm not even disagreeing with that. It's been brutal, the recent stretch for the Cardinals. But Wednesday night, they were able to come up with an exciting win, and the type of win that reminds you, yes, this is what it could be like. Right? Am I right? Cardinals 10, Brewers 6. I'm not going to give you the games back in the division. I'm not going to give you the games back in the wild card. The Cardinals have a long way to go before those numbers are even remotely relevant. But we'll talk about tonight's Cardinals win and the heroes of the game, as well as just the general state of things in a b-schaeff Daily that I'll probably not go incredibly long tonight, because I understand people are probably still going to be thinking more about the negatives of the season than the positives after a night like tonight. But if ever there were any such thing as the concept of momentum, the Cardinals should have at least a little bit of it on their side after Wednesday night's win. Walk-off grand slam in extra innings, that'll get the juices flowing, and we'll see whether it's something that can carry them into better performances in the days ahead. It's not just going to happen via magic. It is going to have to happen via the Cardinals putting together quality at-bats, quality innings on the mound, quality defense, and stringing those things together to try to pile up a bunch of wins in a row. It's the only way that the season's going to change. But if you wanted to be an optimist tonight, you could at least feel pretty good about the way that that game ended up. Cardinals 10, Brewers 6. Tonight on b-schaeff Daily, we'll talk about the game, as well as go down on the farm to talk about a night of walk-offs throughout the Cardinals minor league system as well. It wasn't just the big league club to enjoy walk-offs tonight. I'll explain a little bit more what I mean by that when we go down on the farm in just a little while. Make sure you guys are subscribed to this YouTube channel if you enjoy daily Cardinals coverage. Look, we're throwing some videos at you in the afternoon recently. We had one on Nolan Gorman earlier today, being optioned to AAA Memphis. And then yesterday, the day before this one, you had the Jordan Walker option and the Brandon Crawford release. So we're releasing separate news-related videos as the news drops in the afternoon sometimes. So make sure you're staying tuned to the channel so that you never miss anything. But b-schaeff Daily always going to be the nighttime, overnight wrap-up podcast for the day in Cardinals baseball is the way you can typically look at that. So appreciate you guys for being along for the ride, and make sure, too, to check out the channel memberships if you would like to support the channel in that way. Kyle Gibson was the starter tonight for the Cardinals. He pitched a pretty good game. He looked very sharp through at least 4 or 5 innings or so, and then ran into a little bit of trouble as his outing went along. But 5 2/3, 2 runs allowed, 5 strikeouts, scattered 7 hits and 2 walks in the game. Solid, not a quality start because he didn't quite get deep enough into the game. Ran into a bit of trouble, but was able to kind of battle through and give the Cardinals a solid start, if not a quality one, by definition of the statistic. And then you had just some things go against the Cardinals tonight that were uncharacteristic. Ryan Fernandez is usually one of your more reliable relief arms. He walked 3 batters tonight and coughed up a couple of runs as a result. JoJo gave up a run, also walked a batter. Kittredge gave up a dagger hit at the time. Felt like the Cardinals were in position to at least keep things close after the lead had been coughed up. Cardinals held at one point in time a 2-0 lead in this game, and then Milwaukee proceeded to score a run in the 5th, a run in the 6th, 2 in the 7th, and 2 in the 8th. Negated only by a bottom of the 7th pinch hit home run by Luken Baker. For Luken Baker to go yard tonight and that not to be the biggest story of the game, some crazy stuff happened thereafter. But that was pretty cool to see Luken Baker get his first of the season in his first plate appearance of the season off of Brian Hudson. This is what Ollie Marmol has been pleading to have for a while, is right-handed options off the bench. Tommy Pham was conceivably that when they traded for him at the deadline, but then he really hasn't turned out to be a bench player. They've used him pretty regularly in the starting outfield. Right-hander on the mound, left-hander on the mound, hasn't mattered. And Tommy Pham did a nice job today. 1 for 2, reached base via walk a couple of times, drove in a couple of runs as well. But to have the option there for Luken Baker off the bench to do some damage, no, he doesn't play an outfield position. No, you really can't start him if your goal is to fit 7 righties into your starting lineup against a left-handed starter. That's not what he's going to be here to do, because positionally, it just doesn't work out. He's either going to play first base or he's going to DH. And right now, to have the 7 righties in the lineup against a lefty starter, you'd have to basically have somebody who can play outfield or second base. Now, Jose Fermin is back on the roster, and so that could be a way that you could pull that off. But the Cardinals aren't overly concerned about that right now, because the stretch where they face a number of lefties in a shorter period of time is over, and they're not expecting to face very many lefties coming up. That was the whole rationale for having Jordan Walker here and then sending him back. I think it was ridiculous. I think it was silly, but that was their explanation. That was their reason. And in their minds, if it didn't go well, which it obviously didn't, it was always intended to be a short-term thing. But I digress on that. Having Luken Baker on the roster just makes sense because he can do things like he just did tonight. 32 home runs, 880 OPS in the minors this season. That's what you get off the bench, and it makes sense if you're trying to be a lineup in an organization, a team that looks to maximize and take advantage of platoon scenarios. Luken Baker can be somebody that can mash, potentially even more so against lefties than, say, a Jordan Walker who has reverse splits. So while I think they had maybe their heart was in the right place when it came to the Walker stuff with regard to trying to improve their performance in general against lefties, lefty relievers are a thing as well. And stocking your bench with multiple righties that could potentially do damage for those opportunities and not necessarily just for whatever could come against left-handed starters makes sense. And the other avenue to this is that Luken Baker is a guy who you could potentially see being 40-man roster fodder in the offseason, especially if the Cardinals never give him a look. How many times have we seen that happen where they have these guys in AAA, they put up solid numbers, they get called up for a cup of coffee, maybe 2, and they don't ever really produce because they don't get playing time. They're kind of viewed almost as second-class citizens. Yeah, you're going to be on the bench. You had some nice AAA numbers, kid, but that's not really something that we really care too much about here. Just kind of hang out for a little bit. No, I think they really would like to have a bench that they can utilize, and it's okay that Luken Baker may not get a ton of starts. You can pretty much expect him to take an at-bat at least once per game, and there is an argument to be made that he should start a little bit for Goldschmidt, who has continued to struggle. Argument to be made for having Wilson Contreras catch and having Luken Baker be the DH every once in a while. If you do those things, you can find him at least 2 to 3 starts per week, along with probably a handful of pinch hit opportunities throughout a given homestand, a given road trip, to be able to mix him in and have him showcase his power. Maybe Luken Baker is nothing. Maybe he is a flash in the pan. Maybe at 27 years old, the Cardinals know everything they need to know about him, but I saw tonight a guy who gave the Cardinals a spark, hit a home run in a key moment for them to be able to climb back into a game after the bullpen had struggled to maintain a lead and to maintain order. 4-2, the Cardinals trailed. 4-4, the Cardinals were tied thanks to Luken Baker. Give him some opportunities. I would play him. I'd start him for Paul Goldschmidt on on Thursday afternoon. Not necessarily. I don't care who's pitching for the Brewers. It does not matter. Day game after a night game, I think you give the opportunity to Luken Baker to try to feed into what he was able to accomplish tonight. Am I guaranteeing he's going to have more success? Not at all. But you're not necessarily guaranteed for Paul Goldschmidt to have success, right? And I will say this. Paul Goldschmidt got screwed. Cardinals got screwed. I don't know what Pat Murphy, the manager of the Brewers, was yelling about to get himself ejected in this game in the late innings. But the Cardinals should have won the game in regulation in the bottom of the ninth inning. Because with Devin Williams on the mound, the Cardinals took ball 4, ball 8, and ball 12 against Devin Williams. Like it was the Major League movie. The problem was Paul Goldschmidt got rung up on ball 4 to begin that sequence. The next two guys were walked, and that allowed 2 runs to score. Tommy Pham, almost said Edmund. Tommy Pham with an RBI with the bases loaded walk. Matt Carpenter follows that one up. You end up tying the game on that, but the Cardinals should have won the game right there in regulation as a result. It was not a strike on Goldschmidt, and it seemed like a previous pitch almost might have clipped him in the shoulder in the jersey area. I continued to watch that replay and was not convinced. I know a lot of Cardinals fans were definitive on social media saying that he was hit by the pitch. Just absolute travesty that the dugout didn't challenge. I didn't see it that way. I watched it slow down. If I just was missing it, then maybe I was missing it. I don't know what the common consensus is on that, but it seemed to me like it was close. But certainly the pitch that they rung up Goldschmidt on was not close. It should have been ball 4. And then if you consider the subsequent walks later in that inning to Carpenter and to Tommy Pham, I kind of got those out of the wrong order the first time I explained it. Those guys walk, and that would have been the game. Granted, they may have changed pitchers a little bit sooner had that been the situation, but nevertheless, kind of crazy. Paul Goldschmidt's been having a hard time, and then I think through no fault of his own right there, he was robbed of an RBI. Bases loaded walk would have given him one. But nevertheless, the Cardinals at least tied the game. They laid off of the stuff from Devin Williams. And like I said, I don't know what Pat Murphy was arguing about. If anything, the game should have ended right in the inning that it was in. Instead, he was whining about whatever. The Devin Williams was wild tonight. He's a great pitcher. He's an unbelievable pitcher. He sent Nolan Gorman single-handedly to AAA last night by striking him out to end the game. I mean, for weeks and weeks and weeks, we were saying Nolan Gorman's not really playing. He probably could use the refresh, and it took, I guess, the strikeout last night to end the game that caused the Cardinals to make the move. Maybe they were making it anyway. I'm kind of saying this tongue-in-cheek. But nevertheless, Devin Williams is a great pitcher. Tonight, he just didn't have his stuff. And credit to the Cardinals for not biting on the breaking stuff, for making him throw strikes. And he wasn't able to do it, and so they were able to extend the game as a result. And then you get to the top of the 10th inning. That's Ryan Helsley time for him to get that punch out to begin the top of the 10th. You know you've got the Manfred man, the automatic base runner on second. That's always a tricky challenge, but if you're the home team, it's simple. If you can strand that guy, you should be able to find a way to manufacture a run and win the game in the bottom half, and they were able to get exactly that, the strikeout of Hoskins. Then at that point, you don't really care about the base runner advancing to third base because it's going to not be with less than 2 outs anymore. Mason Wynn kind of gave it a look on the Sal Frelick ground ball, looked to third base. I think he probably could have wheeled and got the guy, but you don't want to put yourself into a duress situation and panic there. So Mason Wynn takes the sure out at first base, and then you've got Ryan Helsley on the mound. He was so sharp, so good to see, and he strikes out Joey Ortiz to send the Cardinals to the bottom of the 10th with a chance to win it. And, of course, you get some intentional walks. You get another walk. You get the bases to be loaded, and you're thinking, oh, boy. Arenado, if he hits a ground ball somewhere, it's probably going to find a glove. It's probably going to be 6-4-3, 5-4-3, 4-6-3, something that you don't want if you're a Cardinal fan. And there are a lot of other ways that it could have gone, right? A walk, wild pitch, pass ball, hit by pitch, sacrifice fly, just hit a ball in the air somewhere, and the Cardinals are winners. They've had multiple opportunities to find a way to make something happen tonight. Lord knows they've had so many opportunities this season. They've come through in some of them, but many more they have not. And in a stretch like the one the Cardinals were in the middle of / are still kind of in the middle of, because, I mean, they're still 2 games below 500, even after tonight's really exciting win. Don't get me wrong. It was great. But the record is what the record is, and they are trying to bounce back from a significant period of losing. They're still 3-7 over their last 10, right? So all of these things are kind of running through your mind, and Nolan Arenado says, I'm just going to make it happen the easiest way I know how. Line drive to left. And you knew off the bat, it was pretty clear, watching on TV anyway, that it was going to be a fair ball. So you didn't have to worry about that aspect of it, and it didn't matter if it made it over the wall, but it's a lot cooler that it did. Cardinals left 13 on base. They're 4 for 17 with RISP, but they got the big one. Nolan Arenado walking it off, and by the way, very key, to win this game 10-6 instead of 7-6, that'll help your run differential. I know people like to talk a lot about that. Cardinals are 62 and 64. The Brewers are a lot better than that. I'm not going to do the happy talk of this changes everything. Watch the Cardinals. They're about to go on a roll. But I got to tell you the truth. I can't blame Ollie Marmol for trying to feed into that a little bit tonight in his postgame, because that's about all they have to hang their hats on right now. They don't have much. They haven't had much to be excited about, be happy about, and for a team that's been grinding the way this team has been and not finding any success, I'm not going to say they haven't been rewarded for their grind, because that's irrelevant. The reward comes from producing the runs that lead to wins, producing the quality pitches that lead to outs that lead to wins. It's not a reward that somebody is going to hand to you, but when you put in hard work, it is nice to see payoff eventually, and that can be a very much self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You finally put in the work that brings about the result on occasion, and that can lead to just finding more ways to make that happen in the days to come. I'm not going to tell you that's exactly what's going to come for this Cardinals team. It remains to be seen. They've got a lot of work to do. But let's play a little bit of Ollie Marmol from the postgame on Valley Sports Midwest, because it was kind of nice to hear the skipper in a chipper mood after the way things had been going recently.
Absolutely loved watching it, and then just overall energy afterwards. You can see like he's betting on himself, man, and that was a big swing that could lead this group moving forward in a lot of ways. We needed that. You look at even the course of this game, we had opportunities and just couldn't get that double or that big hit. Baker did a nice job, and Mason driving in one there. But for Nolan to do what he did right there in the 10th, that could be very meaningful moving forward. So I loved every second of it, man. We've talked about it. I mentioned it yesterday. This group is not going to give in. I love this group. They're going to fight. They're going to give it their best shot. And they did exactly that tonight. You tie it up. Baker comes off the bench. It's the 2-run homer. And then you give it back up with Ortiz's ball to the wall. And you can easily just fold there and go, here we go again. And that's the last thing on their minds. They're resilient. It's a good win. I enjoy the hell out of that one.
Very good win by Ollie Marmol's Cardinals on Wednesday night. And it was a resilient win. You get a lead. Things get a little choppy for Gibby to kind of round out his outing. The bullpen struggles. They're walking guys. Kittredge gives up a walk and then gives up the double into the gap in left center that makes it 6-4. It had been 4-2. You get the Luken Baker home run, and then you give it right back with that. It's just really could be deflating, could be demoralizing, and it wouldn't have been very surprising to see the Cardinals kind of fold in the tent for the last couple of innings offensively after having something like that happen. Like, well, we took our shot once, we took it again, it didn't happen. It's just another one of those games in another one of those seasons. But that's not how they acted. And look, I'm not trying to go way too over the top in the way describing this, but we can describe a good win as a good win. It was a fun win as well for the Cardinals. And like I just said, one that you didn't really necessarily think, if you had watched the tenor and the tone of this season, you didn't think it was coming, let's be honest. I kind of had a sneaking suspicion, though. If you watch, you can go back and look at my Twitter timeline if you don't believe me. I was almost kind of egging it on, like, surely they're going to find a way this time. I just didn't. There were too many opportunities, and they were bound to connect on a couple of them, and Devin Williams was trying to hand it to you on a silver platter. I just felt like the Cardinals, I really did, we're going to come through and win this game. I don't know what it means. It might mean nothing. Ollie Marmol kind of hinting at the notion of that could be a swing. Look, he was in that clubhouse after the game. He knows what kind of celebration took place. Those guys could kind of get the monkey off their backs, right? And so he's aware of maybe a vibe shift that can take place after a win like that. It has to be sustained. What do they say about momentum? It's only as good as your next day's starting pitcher. Well, it's going to be up to Miles Mikolas to show something. And it's key in more ways than one, I think, for him on Thursday, because if it doesn't go well for Miles, you do have Steven Matz that's just about ready to return. You do have Lance Lynn that probably doesn't even need a rehab stint in Memphis or Springfield to be able to compel the Cardinals to put him right back into the rotation. So I don't really know that you could even make a sensible argument that Andre Pallante should leave this rotation right now. He's been one of the most consistent starters that they have, maybe the most consistent starter that they have had since Andre joined the rotation on May the 29th. So if you're Miles Mikolas, man, I think you've got more than enough reasons to go out there and shove on Thursday afternoon in a game that the Cardinals need to try and win a tough series. They lost the series to the Dodgers. They did not play poorly in that LA series. The bats just have not been cooperating. And they have played largely pretty solidly in this Brewers series. I mean, tonight you had Wilson Contreras playing with his hair on fire, as he is known to do. Some of the throws he made to gun down base runners, he was amped up after. You have the Arenado grand slam. He's amped up. People are able to rally in that dugout, in that clubhouse around Luken Baker, getting an opportunity. Like, the vibe has improved with just that one game, but it's only as good as what they do with it tomorrow. And so as much as we can talk about it the post game and say, hey, that could be a swing that could carry them for a little while, the play is going to have to dictate that. Ollie Marmol knows that better than anybody. But I'm not going to say they can't enjoy a win like this one, because it was fun. He should have enjoyed the hell out of that one, because it was a fun win, and one that, like, sometimes you have a losing skid and you need something to break out of it. You can do it in a number of ways, but the more emphatic, the better, if you ask my opinion on it. You might as well go big or go home. You might as well go grand slam, and the only thing Nolan Arenado is upset about afterward is the ice water bath that he has to take while he's getting interviewed by Jim Hayes on the postgame. He said, I didn't like that. I didn't enjoy that very much. Yeah, well, your teammates enjoyed it, buddy, and you earned it with a big-time swing. And you could just tell the look on his face. It was rounding first base. You saw it's kind of in the thumbnail there where he was just pounding his chest, pointing his finger, just to get some frustration out for this team. And nobody better to do it than him, because it's been a frustrating season. You could have said Goldie, but Paul Goldschmidt wasn't going to round first base the way Arenado did. And you need somebody to burst a blood vessel on this team to be able to get something to turn around. So it needed to be emphatic. You needed to do it with an exclamation point. Nolan Arenado found that. There's games on the schedule, guys. I'm not giving you the wild card standings. I'm not giving you the division standings. It's not relevant yet. But go win a series first. Go win a series, and then go win another one. And maybe find a sweep somewhere. And then we can have a conversation. But I would at least say that if you look over the last 5 games, Cardinals lost 2 of 3 to the Dodgers, but like I said, didn't play poorly. They just need to hit. It's very, very simple. They're starting to rearrange the roster. You feel bad. Okay, Brandon Crawford's not here anymore, but let's be real. His numbers didn't dictate his presence. All right? So we don't have to. I put in the thumbnail for yesterday. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. I don't know if anybody commented on the kind of tongue-in-cheek nature of the picture on yesterday's podcast, but I guess I should say, yeah, Wednesday morning's podcast. But if anybody thought that was funny, I did. It made me laugh. So anyway, they got Gorman now going down to Memphis, because that's kind of where he needs to be right now. Whatever the dynamic, whatever any of it is, they just have to win games. And tonight they were able to find a way to do it. Arenado, I mean, he slams his helmet all the way past the pitcher's mound as he is heading into the mob at home plate with his teammates. They got to find something like that. It's going to have to come from consistency, though. That's not a 10-win win, right? That's not a 10-win homer. That's a 1-win homer worth 4 runs in the run differential, worth 1 win in the record book. It's not going to inspire the rest of them, but it might allow everybody to loosen the heck up a little bit, because it can be very difficult to go through those losing skids, especially when you feel like you're not playing particularly poorly against a team like the Dodgers, but you just haven't been able to get over the hump. And as Ollie said in that quote there that we listened to, even in this game, they kind of had a little bit of that. They couldn't find the double to break it open. They couldn't find that swing until then you're down 4-2, and it feels like an, oh no, here we go again. And then Luken Baker is like, it's all good, coach. I got you guys. And then again, it happens with Andrew Kittredge. Look, Kittredge has been struggling, man, and his pitches have not been sharp. And that might be one of the reasons when people say, why is John King facing a righty, facing some of the big righties for the Brewers in that first game of the series? Sometimes the righties that they look at, they might not have a lot more confidence in those guys, and they're trying to keep them fresh in a game that they were trailing 3-2 in game 1. So all of those things are going through the mind of the manager. Sometimes you just need the guy who's supposed to be your best player to hit a walk-off nuke for a grand slam. Sometimes you just need that. We'll see if it's something that can actually propel the Cardinals, or if they kind of fade back into obscurity a little bit and disappointment. But it could go the other way. So if anybody out there is still wanting to be optimistic, you'll find comfort here. I'll listen to your comments. I'll listen to the ones that say, shut up, the season's over. But for the people who are still, looking to enjoy something down the stretch of the season, maybe the Cardinals can provide it, and maybe it started tonight. I know they were trying to milk that on the TV broadcast. Why wouldn't you? You've got to broadcast about this team every single day. I understand why there'd be a little bit of optimism after a game like this, because it was fun, it was genuine, and they found a way. Let me know, Cardinal Nation, how you feeling about it after this game. Obviously, there's a long way to go, but that one was pretty cool. Even if you are the biggest of cold-hearted pessimists and you hate everybody in the organization and you think they should all be fired, you got to admit that was cool. That was a fun one. Before we wrap up the conversation, though, surrounding this game and get to the down on the farm stuff, because there were some exciting things that happened throughout the Cardinals minor league system on Wednesday as well, I just want to give you like about 10 seconds of Luken Baker, his first answer from the postgame as displayed by Bally Sports Midwest. This is, I don't know, something about the way he delivers this line I think is fantastic. Luken Baker after his big day.
I mean, a game like that feels as good as I guess you'd think it feels. It feels awesome. It was a really, really neat deal. I'm pretty excited about it.
He goes, it was a really neat deal. I'm pretty excited about it. Yeah, I'll bet, man. That's awesome for Luken Baker. It's one of those things that you go, okay, big dude hits nukes. Maybe Cardinals don't hit enough nukes equals call this guy up to hit them some nukes? Question mark? Profit? I think that's kind of where we're at this point, and it was really cool to see and cool to hear Luken Baker have the chance to kind of talk and bask in the glow of his big game, big day. I mean, it's a 1-for-1, but it's all you needed, and maybe it'll lead to more. I bet he's in the lineup tomorrow on Thursday. We've been pretty good at being able to call our shot on some of these, just kind of feeling like there's going to be an opportunity for guys, and after that, I think that's probably got to be where Luken Baker's headed. But let's go ahead now, after we wrapped up that conversation about the big league club walking it off, and tell you what they did down on the farm. It's time to go down on the farm. Brought to you by Hastings Layers Premium Eggs.
You'll be happier than a jackass eating thistle.
Huh? You most certainly will be happier than a jackass eating thistle if you were a fan of pretty much any of the minor league affiliates tonight throughout the St. Louis Cardinals organization, or the big league club for that matter. As the big league club, well, we know how that walk-off happened. How about the fact that Memphis, Springfield, and Peoria all won today on walk-offs as well Wednesday, and then Palm Beach didn't need it. They won 9-4 of their own accord, so the entire organization, top to bottom, had a big day today. And how about that? It coming in walk-off fashion for 4 of the 5 is pretty cool to see. We'll start with AAA. 8-7 winners in 10 innings were the Redbirds. Thomas Saggese did start at shortstop. We'll be keeping an eye on that. As I mentioned in my video earlier this afternoon when I talked about the Nolan Gorman demotion, I figure everyday Saggese, play him at shortstop, get the major league staff to where they'll be comfortable enough to potentially take him on and use him in that role to back up Mason Wynn if necessary. And more than anything, it's get Saggese feeling comfortable there as well. He doesn't have to be a great defensive shortstop, just good enough to play as often as Brandon Crawford played, which was literally 3 times since July 1st at shortstop. He had some games at third, and Saggese can move all around too, so that'll be fine. But that role behind Mason Wynn, not really that stressful of a role because the guy's going to play. So just keep him at shortstop every single day in Memphis, something they should have been doing before now with Saggese. Anyway, in my opinion, he didn't have any hits in the big win for the Redbirds, but he did walk twice and score a run, going 0 for 3. Koperniak, 2 for 5. Ivan Herrera was a big contributor. He goes 2 for 5 as well, hitting a home run in that game, couple of RBIs. Mike Antico doing some work as the leadoff man, 2 for 5, 3 RBIs with his home run as well in this game. As the Memphis Redbirds get the walk-off, 8-7. Steven Matz was the starter and didn't pitch particularly well. 5 innings, 4 runs allowed, 9 hits. We will see. He did give up 1 home run. He had as a 2.70 ERA this year in his minor league stint with Memphis. I believe that spans over 2 different stints, but most recently he had actually been pitching pretty well, and today was a little bit of a different result for him. Riley O'Brien also gave up an unearned run in the game. Roycroft was very good, getting the win for the Redbirds, inning in a third with nothing except for a strikeout. No hits, no walks, no runs. But the fact that Matz had a little bit of a struggle, gave up quite a few hits in this one, we'll see what the Cardinals do. I don't know what they're going to do, because if you're adding Matz and you're adding Lynn, like the reason that you can't just bring up Saggese because of 40-man implications is that Steven Matz is going to need that spot. He's on the 60-day IL. When he comes back, he's going to need to be added back to the 40-man roster as a result. So that's probably one of the reasons no Saggese. And the reasoning that Ollie Marmol gave this afternoon was they believe as an organization he needs to be playing every day. I think that's fine, especially until the minor league season kind of wraps up. But then you need to get him here, find a way. That could be bad news for Fermin. That could be bad news for Luken Baker. If they don't play well, then there could be some decisions that end up getting made. But I think ultimately might as well just continue to get the work for Sajacy. If that changes at some point, if Fermin is struggling, like, I don't know. I wanted Sajacy up. I said he should come up, but I also understand that if they're going to try to get him positioned to also be able to take on some of the workload at short, you can do that for another week or two and then potentially try to find his way. But there are going to be other guys, too, that want to get up on this team, right? Ivan Herrera is going to want to get back. And you can't just do infinite amount of roster adds in September anymore. It's not like the full 40-man can come up. It's just 28. So really only one more position player is going to be automatically granted a spot. So I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen with it. But Sajacy sooner than later, like Sajacy's on this team next spring. Coming out of camp, he's on the team. If I had to guess, his bat has been superb since the beginning of July. 990 OPS in July, 840-something OPS here in August. He's been producing. He just needs to get a little bit more solid at shortstop. Whether he can be great at the position or not is irrelevant. He just needs to be passable enough to be the backup to Mason Wynn, who's going to play 150 games next year, right? Like, that's the idea. So that's that. Chandler Redmond, good to see from him. Luken Baker is called up to the big leagues, obviously, with his home run tonight. Chandler Redmond has been at Springfield for 4 years, which is way too long for anybody to be at Springfield. He's 27 years old, kind of in that Luken Baker spot, but one rung behind him on the organizational ladder. And Redmond gets an opportunity finally to get the call up to AAA. And he does a nice job in his first game. 1 for 3 with a run scored. Also drew a walk. So we'll see what he's able to accomplish. Not necessarily a guy I expect to see in the big leagues at some point, but I mean, the dude deserved to be above AA and had some struggles in AA. I think kind of after just never getting promoted, that might have been weighing on him a little bit. But finally is at least up to AAA. And the fact that they called him up kind of tells you that they think Luken Baker is going to be up here for a little while. It's not just going to be like a quick hit. So hopefully Luken is able to get some momentum and stay and deserve the spot. Down to the AA club, Springfield Cardinals 3-2 over the Tulsa Drillers. Offensively, I always look for Jimmy Crooks. He's the main guy we talk about prospect-wise. He was just an 0 for 2, but he did walk twice, had an RBI. He's got 921 OPS with Memphis. Tink Hentz was the starter down in AA. Nice work from him. 4 scoreless innings, 3 hits, 2 walks allowed, only a couple of strikeouts. Tink Hentz gets his pitch count up to 58. The one thing is going to be, what's the innings load going to look like at the end of the year? And is there any semblance of like having a clock on him to where, yeah, you can expect him to help you by 2026. You can expect him to help you by 2025. In the big leagues, it's going to just kind of be hard to say. I think he'll start next year at Memphis, more likely than not, but innings is still going to be a challenge. He's only around 70 innings this year with various, injuries and kind of having to take things slow. Is still only 22 years old, but you'd like to see him get a year where, I mean, they had said this year wanted to be the year where he got to 100 innings, and it's not going to happen. He can get close to maybe 80, might have a couple more starts left, but the numbers are great. 94 Ks in 70 innings with a 2.67 ERA. You got all of that for Tink Hentz, but just a little bit of a frustration to think about, like, he's not going to be that 170-inning workload anytime soon. It's just going to be very difficult to build him up to that, and the Cardinals have been so very careful with pitch counts. And then he's getting some cramps and some little injuries anyway. So we'll see. Durability is still my question with Tink. And it's the reason that I've said Quinn Matthews has surpassed him. Quinn Matthews, in my opinion, is the top pitching prospect in the organization. But Tink Hentz is right there with him, and both of them have nasty stuff. So hopefully by 2026, you can have both of them in the rotation. I just don't know. We'll have to wait and see how either of those guys can progress. And then on down to High A, the Peoria Chiefs also walk off tonight by a 3-2 score. Pretty cool to see. Paniagua was their starter pitcher tonight. Inahan Paniagua, we've seen him be mentioned in some prospect circles and has had some success at the lower levels of the minors. But 6 innings, 2 runs allowed, 6 strikeouts tonight for him. He's at a 3.76 ERA. He's 24 at High A, so not really prospect status, probably as much at this stage of his career, but nevertheless, maybe he's a guy that as some of the AA guys graduate, you're certainly going to see him move from Peoria to AA, and he's going to take his crack at it next year, but he will be in his age 25 season next year, so there is that to consider. But good to see him pitch well tonight, and the Chiefs of Peoria to get that win. And then the Palm Beach Cardinals, where J.J. Weatherholt makes his hay, 9-4 winners over the Port St. Lucie Mets. Weatherholt was 1 for 5 with an RBI. His OPS dipped a little bit down to 707, but you know what? I think he's going to be just fine. Joshua Baez, good to mention him going 3 for 5, and he's another guy that Cardinals hopefully would like to see move up through their system a little bit, has been kind of stuck a little bit down there in A ball, but he's still just 21 years old, and so we'll see if he can kind of get it going. Certainly starting to find a little bit of a stride, at least at the low A level. Believe the story for Baez in terms of the opportunities that he's had previously this year. He was playing at Peoria, struggling, kind of hitting a bit of a wall, and so he's now actually down at low A, but had a very nice game today, so we shall see as it pertains to him. But yep, that's a story too from low A, as everybody in the org getting W's tonight as far as the Cardinals organization is concerned. So that's Down on the Farm. That's your podcast, B-Schaeff Daily. Appreciate you guys as always for listening, for supporting the channel, and for subscribing as well, following on Spotify. By the way, I do have something I wanted to mention before we get out of here. It's probably good that I can bury this toward the end of the podcast in case it's something that nobody really cares about. But you can apparently rate and review B-Schaeff Daily with like little written paragraphs about what you think about the show on apps like Apple Podcasts. I just do not. This is a little inside baseball, but I do not have the access to be able to interact with that on Apple Podcasts because that's not where I host the podcast. I do distribute it to Apple Podcasts, but the analytics on it suck, so I can't like get in touch with anybody. But I saw this from like 2 weeks ago, and I'm just going to read the review and kind of explain a little bit for people who are like, the ads on this show, it's so brutal. I hate listening to commercials. Couple things. This was from Kyle in NOLA, who said, I only gave B-Schaeff Daily 4 stars because half a dozen times through an hour-long episode, loud commercials randomly cut into whatever the host is saying. I'm not complaining about ads in general, but don't understand why we can't have segments or something where the ad is placed rather than randomly happening. Kind of ruins the listening experience. Kyle, I really do appreciate you for listening and for taking the time to leave a review. I do apologize for the ads not being a great experience. The reality of the way that it works, though, is I record these at 1 a.m. off the cuff, and I don't always think to leave gaps in my sentences, like here's where the ad's going to go. I talk for 40 minutes, and then I click done, and the ads kind of get chopped into the spaces where they can best fit. And unfortunately, sometimes that probably does mess up the listening experience. I try to do as good of a job as I can to not let them put ads in like literally mid-word, but I also, the interface is kind of touchy, and sometimes I don't know if it's actually responding to my clicks the way that I'm asking it to do it, and so it's not always, and I really do feel badly about it because I want people to have a good listening experience. The one thing that I am going to try to do, and this is real, I want people to tell me this. I'm going to start this tonight. I'm going to make it a little louder. Like I'm going to amplify the volume of the audio, but the problem is I don't want to max it out and then it starts to clip and starts to sound bad. But I don't like that if they're taking my commercials, which I have no idea what's playing for commercials. I don't have those brand deals in place. Maybe someday, but currently that's not something I have a hand in. But I didn't know they made them louder than my content. So that makes me feel a little bit silly. But I was always scared to blow people's ears out. But if the commercials are louder anyway, maybe I'm just going to blast this audio a little bit, and you guys tell me if it stinks. And it's like this one the quality was bad on Spotify or Apple. It will not be relevant quite as much to YouTube, but still maybe even on YouTube could be relevant. But just want to throw that in there. Kyle, appreciate your review, man. Sorry that we couldn't earn that 5th star, but I am going to try and make some edits and adjustments as a result of your review. So, hey, I do see the reviews, guys, and I really do appreciate whatever app you're on when you leave them. Spotify, I think we've got like a 4.9 rating with over 100 reviews. That helps. So thank you guys so much for all your support, and we will talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.